The domain is one of Austin's most prized possessions. It's what a lot of the people here love to do. It's often referred to as the second downtown. You can eat, you can drink, you can shop, you can work, you can live. So much to do there, but is it perfect? And is it right for you? In this video, we are going to be talking about the 5 things you need to know about the domain, good and bad, if you're going to be living there, moving to that area, or working there, or something along those lines. And if that's what you clicked on this video to learn, stay tuned. To quote one of my most favorite songwriters of the 20th century, hello again. That's Neil Diamond, by the way. And so yes, hello again, everybody. If this is your first time to the channel, my name is Frank, and I'm part of a team at the award-winning J.B. Goodwin Brokerage right here in the oh-so-lovely Austin, Texas. We put out tons of new content every single week, all in regards to living in Austin, Texas, the cost of living, the pros and cons, comparisons of cities and states, vlog tours of certain areas and neighborhoods, and so much more, such as this video. So consider subscribing to this channel if you haven't already, and ring the little bell so that you're notified each and every time we put out a new video. And ever since we started this YouTube channel, we've had a lot of fun, and it's been a lot of hard work, but we've really enjoyed the reach outs we've been getting from people all over the place. That's what's been really cool about this, is being able to reach all kinds of people from all over the world. We love to help, we love to be of service, and we love to make that transition when moving as easy as possible. All you've got to do is pack up those boxes and we take care of the rest. Or even if you're a local Austinite and you're wanting to sell, we've got your back too. But the only way we can help you guys is by you reaching out to us. So be sure to send us an email, give us a call, shoot us a text, any time of day, any day of the week. We've got your back when moving to Austin, Texas. It's what we love to do, so we do it. Now, without further ado, let's talk about the domain. The domain for me has always been one of my favorite places to go personally. It really has everything you need. It's very clean, it's very contemporary, it's very fun, and it's just an overall good vibe. I speak for myself when I say this, or maybe I speak hopefully for most Austinites, is we really take a lot of pride in the domain. And even though it's not, say, an amusement park, or even though it's not a historical landmark, or even though it's not something like Hollywood or like Times Square, it is considered to be quite touristy in the realm, in the stratosphere of Austin, Texas, which is not going to be a Los Angeles or a New York City. And off the bat, I can tell you, if you are someone who's considering moving there, or if you are someone who is perhaps thinking of getting a job there, or even want to live somewhere around the domain, I'll tell you ahead of time, you're gonna enjoy it. It's mostly good. I do have some things to say against it, which stick around to the end of the video to find that stuff out. But in my opinion, you'd be making a safe bet. And in order to help you further make your own opinion on the matter, let's get into the 5 things that you need to know about the domain. For starters, let's talk about the location. The location is one of my most favorite things about the domain to begin with. You're not all the way downtown, just in the thick of the city. You're not too far north, you're not too far south. The domain is technically in North Austin, but it's north enough to where you're not quite in the suburbs yet, and it's south enough to where if you want to go downtown from the domain, you're looking at 10 or 15 minutes really to get from point A to point B. And even better news, a lot of the people who like to go to the domain more recreationally are going to be families. And where do the families live mostly in Austin? Well, they live in Round Rock, they live in Cedar Park, they live in Leander, they live in Georgetown, they live in Liberty Hill, they live in Pflugerville, and yes, the North Austin area, which in my opinion is a great part of Austin itself. And where the domain is located within North Austin is what I would call the tech corridor of Austin, Texas. So there's going to be more money there, things are going to look newer there, and again, very centrally located, at least in regards to the greater Austin area. You could be living downtown and, as I said, drive 15 minutes to it. If we're talking about the suburbs that I mentioned already, Minutes wise, I'd say Cedar Park, you're probably a good 15 minutes. Round Rock can also be 15 minutes, just a little bit east instead of north. Leander might be 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Georgetown about the same, maybe 30. And obviously if you're in that North Austin, Northwest Austin area, it'll just be a hop and a skip. And because it's in the tech corridor of Austin, those are going to be the normals that you see in the Domain. A lot of the people who spend the bulk of their time at the Domain day in and day out are not necessarily going to be the families. You're going to see younger professionals, I'd say anywhere from the late 20s to probably the mid 40s. And that plays into the overall vibe and culture of the Domain, which I will get to a little bit later in this video. But yes, in conclusion, the location of the Domain itself, aside from everything else I'm going to talk about, is really what starts the demand for it, right? How sought after it is in terms of real estate or in terms of just wanting to spend a few hours there. Now, before we move on, be sure to comment down below. If you have any questions, do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you have ideas for future videos we can make for you guys? List them all down below and we'd love to get involved. In addition, be sure to like this video as well, as it really helps our channel grow and it tells us that we're doing a great job providing value for you guys. And if you haven't already, be sure to check out our Domain vlog where we actually go in person, camera and all, walking up and down and just really getting a good feel of it visually for you guys. You can see pictures of a place, you can hear about a place from a guy talking about it, but you know, that's why we like to do the vlogs, to show people really what they can expect. So check that out if you haven't seen it yet. All right, the second thing to note about the Domain are the things to do. Why does everyone even go to the Domain in the first place? Well, early on it was mostly just for the shopping, because the Domain, which started in 2007, which blows my mind because I want to say it started in 2012, 2013, 2014, right? But it actually was really much less of what it is today, as early as '07. And the reason I say early days is because even as recently as 2019, it continues to grow and expand and just get bigger and bigger and bigger with more and more things to do. But the initial thing you could do at the Domain, all there really was to do in those early days, was shop. And so off the top of my head, I'm gonna try and see which ones I can remember because there's just so many. I would say Dillard's, Macy's, Nordstrom, Louis Vuitton, H&M, Zara, the Apple Store, Tesla, Kendra Scott. I'd say the Microsoft Store, but my memory tells me that it didn't last very long. I don't know what happened with that, but I don't think it's there anymore. But there's also an Amazon bookstore, there's an Aldo, there's Lucky Brand. I'm really scratching my head here. There's just so many, and I've only named, gosh, probably 5% of all the stores that are there now. You name it, it's there, especially if it's upscale. And then not too long after the shopping, the food followed. So then you'd see Starbucks there, you'd see smoothie shops there, you'd see a sushi place right next to the luxury movie theater called iPic, right next to the Dick's Sporting Goods. Oh, that's another one. And so not too long from its birth, the Domain really started blooming in the sense of now it was opening very fancy, elegant, upscale eateries in addition to the Starbucks of the world and the different smoothie and ice cream places that you can go just for little treats. Now there were full-blown dining restaurants. And then what happened after that? They started opening these magnificent hotels on site. Archer, the W, and then they built a Topgolf within walking distance from the Domain. If you're not familiar with Topgolf, it is a gigantic place to play golf with drinks, with snacks, where you're just hitting it and it goes towards a net, and you see a lot of people who either currently play golf or used to play golf really trying their hardest to like impress or make themselves proud or something, and then you see the families just kind of chucking away. I'm somewhere in between, probably closer to the family though, because the extent of my golf ability is probably putt-putt. But I have hit some of those golf balls pretty far, and that was my crowning achievement. So Topgolf is a lot of fun, and it's right there again by the hotels, by the restaurants. And then once that was already rapidly growing and expanding, it seemed constantly, then they added a night scene, a bar strip called Rock Rose, and that was the best thing that the Domain ever did, because it was already popping, right? It was already doing well. It was fresh, it was young, it was vibrant. But when you add that bar strip, that really changes things, because the Domain was already a place to be during the day. But now they've turned it into a place to be during the night, because, you know, most shops would close at 9 or 10, like most anywhere. But then what do? You go down to Rock Rose and you have yourself a good time. But these are not your typical bars or clubs, right? It's comparable to 6th Street, but I would describe 6th Street as more trashy, and that's not an insult, because trashy can be quite fun. You've got your food trucks, you've got people dressed half naked, you've got people drunk in the streets. They close off the streets. It's much more of a bar hopping kind of time, where you might see someone get sick on the street, or you might get some whiffs, some certain smells, that kind of environment. Whereas the Domain is more upscale, it's more fancy. And I don't want to say it's exclusively fancy. It's not like only people with money go or can go to the Domain, because that's simply not true. But you're going to have a classier experience. You are going to see valet. You're going to see lovely cars that you wouldn't see at least quite so often downtown. And again, as I initially said, you're not going to have the same types of bars and clubs. What's really cool about the Domain is it has a bit of Austin in it. I'll elaborate more on the vibe, the culture of the Domain a little bit later, but as far as things to do, again, you've got your shopping, you've got your eating, now you've got your drinking, but what I will say is it's a new, fun, different way to do things. It's very authentic to Austin, it's very eclectic, it's very artistic, it's very hipster. And I say that because one of the bars you can go to, you can play nostalgic video games. Now, it's funny, that changes over time, because a nostalgic video game used to mean Pac-Man, it used to mean Sonic, the original dawn of video games. Now, nostalgic, depending on your generation, could simply mean Nintendo 64, it can mean Mario Kart, it could mean things of that nature. But this bar has a little bit of everything, and you play them arcade style while you drink, and it has Jenga, and it has a photo booth, and just fun, lively things to do that you really don't see as much downtown. In addition to that, you've got another one called the 77, which is my personal favorite. It's a rooftop bar. Very contemporary, very loungy, and it has hookah. Now, I had my hookah phase several years back, because in my experience, hookah is something that you really get into when you're legal to do it, right? It's one of those cool things to do, right? You want to flaunt the fact that you're of age, so what do? You start smoking hookah. And I'm not trying to insult it or belittle it whatsoever, because it can be quite a good time, but that's really when I did it most. I'll still enjoy hookah socially, occasionally, sometimes if I'm with friends or something of that nature, but not so much like I used to, you know what I mean? But it's a great environment. You get to sit down on these lovely couches, it's very well lit, and again, classy, not trashy, and enjoy your hookah and enjoy your drinks. And then part of the 77, if you just keep walking through, there's an indoor part where there's a club, which is, as most clubs are, very loud, but still very fun, very nice, very well set up. The floor plan, thinking like a real estate agent. But yeah, it's a very good time. And then just down from that, you've got another rooftop bar which has sports and things like that. Down from there, you have an Irish pub, which feels very much like an Irish pub. No, I've never been to Ireland. No, I've never been to a genuine Irish pub. But as an American, I can claim that it makes you feel like it. You know what I mean? If you imagine what it's like. And so many cool different things like that really have a lot of cool personality, a lot of authenticity, and a certain freshness, a certain youthfulness to it, that doesn't feel tired or dirty or trashy, or yes, it's loud, but in its own way, in a very Domain way. Another place I really like in that Rock Rose area is a place called Punch Bowl Social. Now, Punch Bowl Social has ping pong, it has bowling, it has different types of games that you can enjoy while you're drinking, and it's kind of like, not an arcade, because these are different types of games, they're not video games, but It's much more hands-on, it's much more lively and fun, and they have food as well that you can order as you drink and play these games. I can remember a handful of times playing ping pong, and I wouldn't win all the time, but I had a lot of fun. I would say I'm a mediocre ping pong player. I'm not necessarily one to brag, but I'm also not necessarily one to be good. It depends, right? You catch me on a day where I'm on fire, you're done. Most other days, I'll make it close. I'll say that. You won't beat me, horrifically. I'll say. And so my point is, there's really no shortage of things to do at the Domain. If you want a bite to eat, you have a plethora of options. If you want drinking, you've got a plethora of options. If you're in the mood to blow some money, you've got a plethora of options. If you want to go to the movies, if you want to get a massage, and so much more, it's really got you covered. So look forward to that. All right, moving on to the next thing you need to know about the Domain, and that would be, yes, the vibe, the overall energy, the overall culture of it. And as I've described it, I've noticed I might be describing it as a place that seems snooty, snobby, elegant, fancy, exclusive, and that's simply not true. While the Domain is clean, while the Domain is new, while the Domain is contemporary, while the Domain is a little bit pretentious, no, the Domain is not just some place for rich people. Is it expensive? Yes, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Right now, talking about the vibe, I would say California and Austin had a baby, and it was the Domain. Now, I lived in California about a little over a year, and so I'd never call myself a local, I'd never call myself a Cali native or anything like that, but over a year you get a sense for just the vibe of a place, how it runs, what the mood is, how it looks, things like that. And it reminded me a lot of, say, Huntington Beach, where it's pretty, it's nice, there's a shopping center, it's tasteful. But at the same time, it's very Austin-y, and you'll see art, and you'll see a lot of younger people. Not necessarily kids or teens or people even in their early 20s, but as I said in the beginning of this video, late 20s, definitely 30s into the 40s. And that plays a factor in the vibe of the place, so let me explain. The people who live and work in the Domain generally are tech people. And I don't want to speak for all of them, obviously I'm generalizing, but what Austin prides itself in being right now is the modern, adventurous, young tech hub of Texas. It's old news now that Silicon Valley from the Bay Area has come to Austin. Much of it has come to Austin, and they branded it Silicon Hills, and that's really affected the job market, it's really affected the population, it's really affected the overall economy, and yes, the housing market as well. And it's really capitalized on the Austin-y culture to begin with, which once upon a time was just a young college town that wasn't very big, and it still isn't humongous, right? But it's really expanded. And so the marriage of the old college town and the new modern current tech world was a beautiful marriage, at least in my opinion. Now, Texans, they kind of roll their eyes at it. The overall mood of Texas is that Austin is very much the California of Texas. And they're not wrong, but it's still very Texan at the end of the day. So don't let me deter you. There's still such a strong sense of the culture here. But back to the Domain, because it is in that tech corridor where all of these companies are now relocating to, those are the people who live at the Domain. And when you live at the Domain, it's really like you're living in your own bubble. There's grocery stores there. You can ride your bike there. You can just walk everywhere. You've got everything you need. You've got the gyms, and as I've said, the shopping, the food, all of it. And so when you walk around, say you go on a Tuesday afternoon, right? Or something like that, where it's not going to be Saturday, Sunday when all the families come to buy their kids ice cream, go to the movies, and go shopping and things of that nature. When you go, say 1:30 on a Tuesday, the people you're going to see at the Domain are pretty much, they're walking and they're on the phones, or they're sitting outside the Starbucks working on their laptops, or they're having business lunches or gatherings. It feels very professional, and that can be a little bit surprising because a lot of the times that most anyone goes to the Domain, they go to enjoy the Domain recreationally. So it can be a bit of a adjustment when you just see it in its everyday mood, which is, I wouldn't say hustle and bustle, but it's its own bubble. It's its own little mini town, its own world. That's the best way I can describe it. And no, you're not going to smell any weed. You're not going to see any homeless people. You're not going to see any trash. It's very much the perks of being in downtown Austin without being in a downtown metro area, what you can typically expect from it. Is it perfect? Again, absolutely not, and I will get to that a little bit later in this video, but that is the general vibe you can expect of the Domain. Now, for a lot of people, that fits like a glove. You're in your late 20s, you're in your 30s, you might be single, you might be just with a girlfriend, or you might even be starting a family, you might be on your first kid, maybe something like that. Just a young professional who wants to live in a hot spot, who wants to live in a popular spot, you know, that'll fit you like a glove. And I'm not saying that they just turn away people that are older than that, no way, but that if you want to fit in at the Domain, that's the general demographic, if I had to describe it. And so naturally it plays into the overall culture and mood and, dare I say, spirit of the Domain. And one quick note before we move on from the subject of the vibe, to touch on it real quick, if you are a dog lover, and I guess you already know where I'm going with this, Austin itself as a city is very progressive, it's very healthy, it's very adventurous. You're going to see an abundance of vegan options, vegetarian options, yoga places, crystal shops, even organic pet stores, right? That sell organic products for your little furry animals. And Austin is known to have designated spots outside of its shops and restaurants to leave your animals, to just keep them outside while you go shopping, or many of them will let you bring in your animals. And the Domain is no different. It borrows that from Austin, right? From downtown Austin. It has that same feel where the last time I was there, actually when we were shooting the vlog for this channel, half the people I saw had their dogs with them. And it was a great sight, and no, there was no mess anywhere. No, it didn't smell. And that's very authentic to Austin, right? It's very, not to say that it's progressive to have a dog or anything, but if you're getting what I'm saying about the overall healthy lifestyle, healthy living, active living, that's very much ingrained in the Austin culture, unique to Austin, not so much Texas, right? And so the Domain, in my opinion, does a great job of capturing that, of nailing it without the downsides, in my opinion. So that's just something to keep in mind if you're gonna be coming here with a furry friend and you're looking at living in the Domain or near the Domain, rest assured your little guy is more than welcome there. All right, so finally moving along to the fourth thing on this list of 5 things that you need to know about the Domain, and that would be the subject of the real estate. Now, even though I am in real estate, I'm not going to get so in depth and talk about numbers and market analysis and things of that nature. I'm just going to give you a general idea of what you can expect if you are someone who is planning to move there or move nearby. The Domain itself, within the community, if you want to call it that, is mostly apartments. And what we specialize in our day-to-day and with this channel are helping people who buy, not rent. But I will say, even still, the Domain has an abundance of apartment living. That's really what you're going to see. You're going to see a Kendra Scott, and then you're going to see an apartment building right next to it, and they are exquisite apartments. I mean, I've considered living at the Domain myself, but I don't know if it's the right fit for me in terms of the things I don't like about it so much that are coming up next. But it is a beautiful place to live. And yes, there are condos. It's not that you can only rent. There are options to buy, which would be a tremendous investment in this market, especially not just Austin, which is the relocation hotspot of the country right now, but within Austin, which is already hot, to then be in the Domain, which is one of the hottest spots within a hotspot. To purchase property there or around there, you are absolutely going to be making a return on your investment in absolutely no time. I mean, my goodness. But yes, if you are going to be renting at the domain, you can expect what I've seen is as low as $700 a month, but tread carefully. Those are probably going to be little just boxes that you can fit in and have enough room to sleep, you know what I mean? Or it might be on the outskirts of the domain area where you're not necessarily close to everything. What you're really looking at in the domain is if you really want not a studio but a 1-bedroom, or you want a little more space, you want a better location, the cheapest you might find is probably going to be, I don't know, 12, 13, 14, 1500 really to start things off. And then the more space you want, right, so you're not crammed, the more bedrooms you want, the better location you want, then you'll be looking at north of 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 and up. It can really get pricey. It can really get luxurious, you know what I mean? And a lot of you who are watching this, you absolutely have the money. So by all means, consider it. If you are someone who is more focused on budgeting, on saving, or you just don't have as much to spend, I wouldn't recommend it unless you're willing to settle for something a little less than desirable, you know, if it means you're going to be living at the domain. We have worked with people who they don't care, they just want to live at the domain, and that could be you, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just being brutally honest with you guys. Now, if you wanted to purchase a home, which is more our specialty, you're not going to find anything in the domain because it's not suburbia. It's really, the best way to describe it is a shopping center, an outdoor shopping center, or kind of an outlet mall. I wouldn't compare it to an outlet mall, but something like that, right, with apartment and condo living. So if you are looking to buy a house, let's say you have a family or you just want a little more space, whatever it may be, and you want to live near or around the domain without being in it, but you're just a hop and a skip away, say if you got a job there, I'd say the cheapest you can find, which is going to be older, which is going to be a bit more run down, probably around $400,000 right now. And then obviously upwards from there. I'd say your median in that area is probably going to be 5 or 6. And if you really want something nicer, of course, closer to $1 million and $1 million plus. It's not necessarily a luxury area. It's not necessarily a poor area. It's pretty well balanced. It's pretty sporadic, you know, Northwest Austin, different areas of it, right? So if you are wanting to live around the area, that's what you can expect. If you want something newer, nicer, more spacious, you're looking at, yeah, 400, 500 and up. You might be lucky to find something maybe in the 3s, but again, it'll be much older. It'll be probably in a bit of an older area, still close, but not quite what you might get if you spend more, obviously. So last but certainly not least, the 5th item on this list of things to know about the domain, it's going to be the downsides, and it's just going to be one umbrella of why you might not want to live there, or my own reasons of why I wouldn't want to live there if you're anything like me. And for starters, it's loud. It is so loud there. I am someone who used to dream of city life, who used to dream of the penthouse, right? Or just something like that. And after living in Los Angeles, I changed my mind pretty damn quickly. And the domain is obviously, it's not Los Angeles, right? I'm not trying to directly compare it to that, but I've since learned about myself that I would much rather have something on land. I'd much rather be near water. I'd like to have tall trees, commune with nature, John Denver type. That's much more me, right? Rocky Mountain High. That's much more authentic to who I am. And so being at the domain, while I would love it for a billion reasons that I've probably already mentioned in this video, I wouldn't have any peace, and neither would you. Now, if you're coming here from a city, if you're coming here from New York, if you're coming here from an LA, my goodness, it'd probably be a breath of fresh air for you because it doesn't really compare to that type of density and noise. However, if you're from someplace like Texas or someplace where it's just more spread out, quiet living, it's going to be quite a bit of an adjustment. It's not suburbia. It's not obviously the metro, right? But it's certainly not suburbia. And so you're going to walk past a restaurant that's blasting music, not to mention the bars and clubs. You're going to walk past candy stores blasting music. Things like that. You're gonna walk by loud groups of people, and it really doesn't ever sleep. I mean, if I want to be technical about this, it probably sleeps between 4 and 8, 4 and 9, about 5 hours where there's nothing going on. But those stores are gonna open at 8 or 9 or 10, and the nighttime bar strip is gonna be open till 2 or 3, and it's just, there's always going to be people walking around. It's always going to be very alive, and that's a beautiful thing if you're into it. But if you're not, man, you're really not. I mean, you're not gonna like it. And I'll recall shooting our vlog to get you guys an idea of how it looks and feels to be there. That was such a pain to shoot. I mean, I'm no professional cameraman, I'm no producer, right? All of this is just the efforts of myself and my team. But even still, just to make that video for you guys was one of the hardest vlogs we've ever shot, because the amount of takes I'd have to do, or my sentences would get interrupted, or a loud noise would really distract me, or I'd bump into someone, or I couldn't hear myself think. Not exaggerating, it was like that. It was, by the end of that vlog, I kept it together for the camera, but I was pissed. I was irritable. I was so done. I was so ready to go. And again, that's my personality. Too much of that frazzles me. I get fried. Other people that I know personally in my life, they thrive on it. They love it. It feeds them. So again, it's different for each and every person. But just being there to shoot a vlog was, my gosh, I mean, the noise, the people, the crowds, and we shot that on a Wednesday afternoon around 2. That's when we shot it. We didn't shoot it on a Saturday evening. We didn't shoot it on a Sunday afternoon. We didn't even hit the bar strip after 9 or 10. We were just walking through on a normal weekday, and it was already that alive, which again, beautiful thing. But when you're living there, that's the thing, because a lot of people, they look at the Domain as the place to shop, to drink, to eat, everything I've mentioned. But living there is, you know, when you're really there, and it's 24/7. So keep that in mind. The next thing I'll say that's a downside of the Domain is that it lacks scenery. You know what I mean? And for starters, Texas, specifically Austin, was flat farmland, farm and ranch. A century ago, right? 2 centuries ago. Not much going on. It wasn't like the Northeast where you could rewind the clock 200 years and it's still a booming city. No, Texas was Texas, you know what I mean? And because of that, it's not like these beautiful metro areas in other states where you see mountains, right? Like I lived in Pasadena. I say Los Angeles because it's general, right? But I lived specifically in Pasadena, and out of my window in the house I had, it was mountains and palm trees. Just in a normal part of town, you just had that scenery. Austin, you don't have that. And the Domain, if you're going to be living there or spending a lot of time there, yes, the Domain itself is pretty. It's new, it's well kept, it's contemporary, it's all the things I've mentioned, but it's not even suburbia. At least suburbia, if you go to Terra Vista, if you go to Avery Ranch, if you go to Steiner Ranch, if you go to Westlake, you're going to see ponds, you're going to see lakes, you're going to see a lot of green, these master plan communities where they build them around golf courses, right? Just things that are pleasant on the eyes. Living in the Domain, none of that. I mean, you might have green on the sidewalk, and yes, they plant some trees and make it very nice, but if you're someone who does like a little bit of scenery, if you like something that's open, or you like space or green or anything of that nature, you're out of luck with the Domain. It's simply not part of that vibe. Another thing I'll say that I've already kind of touched on, but I'll kind of spin it, is that the Domain is relatively expensive. There are options, there are affordable options, yes, to live there, but if you really want a better quality of life when you're there, expect to pay a pretty penny. And for people with money, if something is expensive, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But a lot of people that I'm speaking to in this video who are watching, are more middle of the road, or they're lower middle, or you know what I mean, and they want to have access to that, they want to be part of it, but you know, it's slim pickings if you don't have the pretty penny to kind of get your foot in the door of someplace nicer. And that's what you get though. That is the trade-off, right? You get what you pay for at the Domain. You really do. You get an amazing experience, probably one of the best places to live that Austin has to offer. You get that. But yes, you pay for it, and I do consider it, I guess, unfair as it may be, a downside. I would like to go out on a limb. I haven't checked any statistics, but I will pretty confidently say that a large percentage of the people who live at the Domain are not even from Texas. They are probably mostly from California, and if they're not from California, they're certainly not from Texas, you know what I mean? They're from Arizona, they're from Oregon, you know, someplace like that, New York, because like I said, Austin is a hot spot for relocation, and a lot of people here nowadays are not from here, and the Domain being what it is, the draw that it is, the hot spot that it is, you're going to have a lot of those transplants, which is what you call them, living there. And when you have those types of people living there, I'm not saying they're all rude, right? But they're not all Texan, and you might be expecting, coming to Texas, warm, friendly neighbors who will strike up conversation with you, invite you to their cookout, be your automatic friend, play some hold'em, something like that, which you do get in the suburbs, which you do get pretty much anywhere else in Austin or in Texas. But the Domain, it has that city living feel, you know, even though it's not downtown. So something to keep in mind if that's simply not your cup of tea. If you are from New York, and maybe I'm describing you, maybe I'm describing you to a T, and you think, wow, I'll fit in perfectly. Hell yeah, you will. Do it. And you will meet very nice people there, don't get me wrong. I'm just really picking my brain to think of downsides, because I do like to be brutally honest with the videos we make. I don't like to mislead. That's not really my thing. And one of my pet peeves are real estate agents who, they just say everything's pretty, everything's perfect, you're gonna love it, you know, grass is greener here. I don't know, just very kind of slimy, kind of sleazy. That's always turned me off. I don't do my business that way, and I think when you're moving somewhere and it's either yourself or you're with a family, even more so, and you're going to spend quite a hefty amount of money, you don't want to be misled, you want to be given the truth. And the truth is, the Domain is pretty much great, and I know I just called out people who say that, but the reason I'm saying, that's the reason why I'm really picking my brain and trying to be as brutally honest, even if opinionated, as I can be, to give you guys the most clear picture as possible. And so whether it is the Domain, whether it's downtown, whether it's Cedar Park, whether it's Round Rock, anything in between, whether you're by yourself, with a family, what we love to do and what we pride ourselves in doing is making that relocation process, that transition, as easy and seamless as possible, to where all you really got to do is pack up your boxes and we take care of the rest. Same can be said if you're wanting to sell your place here in Austin. That's what we love to help with as well. And we just like to make that difference and make things as easy breezy as possible, and it's what we're good at, which is another reason why we like to do it. So be sure to call us, email us, text us, any day of the week, any time of day. We've got your back when moving to Austin, Texas. And once again, consider subscribing to this channel as we put out tons of new content every week, all in regards to living in Austin, Texas. Like this video as well to help us grow and tell us we're doing a great job. Drop your comments down below so that we can get involved. And until the next one, you guys, we will absolutely catch you later.